Hey guys, back from the dead, not really, because this is probably gonna be my only v0.2 video, and I'm gonna talk about the build that I'm doing, but it's not really in the very end game, so I can't really say if it's good enough or not. So I just want to focus mainly on how you can actually make Herald of Blood chain explode, because normally Herald of Blood, it itself cannot cause bleed. When enemies that have blood loss, which includes any physical damage over time, when enemies die, that blood loss is kind of turned into damage. Explosion happens after a short delay, and that explosion itself cannot bleed, but it can poison. And if it poisons and you have enough chance to poison and like chance to bleed as well, if that explosion poisons, it can apply bursting plague, which is another explosion. And that explosion is not an attack. It does have base crit chance. It's not an attack, so it doesn't care about accuracy. But that poison explosion can still bleed and it can still poison. Essentially, you kill the enemy explodes because of Herald of Blood. It poisons other enemies. Those enemies, when they die, so there's kind of delay. When they die, they then explode. They are only poison. They explode and apply poison and bleed. And those other enemies that are bleeding, when they die, they then trigger Herald of Blood again. And then Herald of Blood does again more damage. And it works really well when there are a lot of enemies. But there is a delay, and it's not the highest damage, but I feel like it also scales up the blood loss damage and like the hit damage from the Herald of Blood. So I'm not sure how many builds could use this. I do have 100% chance to bleed and 100% chance to poison, like a generic poison. I am a Ritualist, and I also have Blood Boil, but Blood Boil is a bit confusing, and I'm not gonna go into details how it works because honestly I cannot remember how exactly it works. All I know is that the Blood Boil, enemies in your presence after 1.5 seconds when we die, we then apply corrupted blood to other enemies. Essentially it's almost like poison proliferation, but in PvE1 where poison can still stack, so it kind of stacks damage over time onto the strongest enemy that remains, which is usually rare. So rare monsters in the middle of the pack usually just get shredded, both from bleed, from poison, and from corrupted blood. So this is a Ritualist, but it's kind of weird Ritualist. I'm not sure. I just went with Ritualist because I wanted to do bleed build, and bleed build at the start of the league was really bad. And then a couple patches later they improved the bleed, and then they also buffed rapid assaults, explosion. And I am mainly clearing with Spearfield just because I couldn't find the other skill that I wanted to use. I did not want to use Rake. If you don't mind using Rake, use Rake. That will do a lot more damage. But Spearfield just applies spears, and if enemies walk on them, they get hit, but the damage is very low. The damage is like 50% of the attack damage, so it's like really low, and for bleed and poison you want as big hits as possible. However, in mapping scenarios it doesn't really matter. It seems like something dies and it will start the chain reaction, so you don't necessarily need to worry too much about doing that much damage. Besides, Spearfield is kind of safe option. You can stack a bunch of these and walk back, and then the enemy is gonna walk onto them and gonna get poisoned and bleed and most likely die. Another really insane thing, I would say even insane thing for bleed build is the Bloodhound's Mark. You put this on, you attack once with this, and the enemy is stunned. Pretty much almost guaranteed. Very few rares do not get stunned by one attack. Usually the blood loss is enough to stun rares. Almost the same goes for bosses. There are tougher bosses that don't immediately get stunned, but the Bloodhound Mark is just kind of insane for dealing with rares. Rapid Assault is kind of the main damaging source for the single target in my case. And the way it works, it stabs 5 times, and I believe the 6th one kind of impales a spear into an enemy, and that spear can be detonated, and you can stack up to 5 spears, and you can detonate them with any detonating skill like this sleep ability, Thunderous Sleep. The Rapid Assault's explosion got buffed, and now its attack damage matches the final strike damage. However, you can stack up to 5 spears, and I believe they stack all into one bigger explosion, and one bigger explosion applies bigger bleed. But what I usually do is just drop Bloodhound Mark, stab boss couple times. Usually it gets stunned by that point, and then I use this ability, and then maybe drop spear field to have higher chance to aggravate bleed. And yeah, that's what I'm doing pretty much. And for mapping, you don't even need to do anything. Just standing still will proc gale force when enemies hit you, which then will do wind dance, which then will do damage, bleed enemies, poison enemies, and start the chain reaction. And the Herald of Blood with the bursting plague will take care of the rest of the monsters. By the way, I will include path of building import code if you kind of want to copy this build. I'm not sure if I would recommend a Ritualist. Like I said, the Ritualist doesn't really add anything special other than Blood Boil, but Blood Boil is just a bit of extra damage, and sadly it's based on your presence area, so you're gonna be running around, so it's not really gonna be useful most of the time. And other than that, it just buffs your ring effect, so I do have a higher chance to apply bleed and poison, because these two rings just give me a flat amount of bleed and poison, while most other sources on the passive skill tree increases, well, not most, but many of them just increase the chance to bleed and poison, which scales off your base bleed and poison chance. So for example, these nodes increase the chance to inflict ailments. So you do need good chance to inflict ailments for that. And I didn't want to use chance to bleed support or chance to poison support, so I tried to go with dual dot build, bleed plus poison, and scale both at the same time. So I am getting enough chance to poison, chance to bleed as well. And I am anointing this one, that's how I aggravate bleed, but previously I was using unique body armor, which just guarantees aggravate. I was using this body armor. However, it's like level 1 I believe without runes, and it has no defenses. And because I'm a Ritualist, I cannot get easy access to a lot of crit chance like Amazon can with Spear, so I had to figure out how else to scale my damage, and I would say the damage is okay. I'm pretty happy with the damage. While clearing, Herald of Blood pretty much takes care of all the monsters, but I did only up to tier 11 maps, but so far I almost feel like rare monsters are a bit too easy at this point. I guess I'm gonna go over my links right now. Another problem is that they added like 100 new support gems, but all of those 100 new support gems, there's still not enough support gems that add damage without some nonsense conditional things. My Rapid Assault is still on free supports. I'm still missing 2 supports. Currently I'm using this Heavy Swing. 30% more maximum physical damage will affect both. And then this one, Concentrated Effect, affects Rapid Assault, which is normally a strike skill, but it does have AoE. And it does increase the damage by quite a lot. So that's what I'm using for that. But I also need Spear Field to do good damage, so this is using plus 1 extra poison. Poison actually does even more damage. Bleed can be aggravated, which gives 100% extra damage, but that's per single poison stack, and I can stack I believe 4 poison stacks, sorry. I have plus 1 on the gloves, plus 1 in here, and then plus 1 on the passive tree. This is like 1.6k damage, and this one is like 700 damage. And especially for Spear Field, because Spear Field just hits like 4 times immediately, or maybe even 5 times against a single target, so it's very easy to stack multiple poisons. And then this one just recreates spears. Like I don't know what else to add to this. This one 25% more attack damage to enemies within 1 meter of you. This isn't really that great, and I probably would use this for the Rapid Assault, but I also need enough damage for Spear Field, and I don't know what else to add. I don't want to use like Deep Cuts, which lowers the hit damage but gives you like more magnitude of bleed. Nor do I want to use Deadly Poison of the same thing, because if I lower the hit damage, it will lower the bleed damage and the poison damage. And if I only increase the bleed damage, then the poison is going to be weaker. So it's hard to find support gems that would increase the damage of both bleed and poison and wouldn't have some nonsense conditional things. The Blood Hunt is not really doing much damage in my case. I use just to kind of dash to enemies faster and sometimes to finish them off. Actually, Blood Hunt is linked to Bloodlust, which prevents bleed, which is bad, so you don't want to use in main setup. Bloodhound Mark just have single out to break enemy armor, and broken enemy armor I believe makes them take 20% more damage, and obviously they don't have armor, so you can hit harder and apply stronger bleeds and poison. Thunderous Leap just attack speed to leap faster. Herald of Blood, now Herald of Blood, Bursting Plague is the main support, and then just boost AoE. Reach will boost AoE, Magnified Field will boost AoE of the Herald of Blood and Bursting Plague, but Reach will not boost the AoE of the Bursting Plague because it's not an attack, while the Herald of Blood is an attack. And then Deadly Herald just to boost the Herald of Blood damage. Wind Dancer, just recover and just some kind of utility. But Wind Dancer, I currently have almost 15,000 evasion, but that's with Wind Dancer and some nodes on the passive tree. Like I said, it's hard to find support gems that would work for this, for both bleed and poison. There is a support that you can use Pursuit for your spear field or rapid assault, but you also have to include some kind of projectile skill, and I currently don't have it. I could add it just to be able to use it, but that's if I decided to try to min max. Another thing is that I do have mana problems, so even if I add more support gems, I would have even bigger mana problems, and I think I would end up wanting to use some support gem to either get mana leech or some other way to solve mana problems. My amulet actually is anointed with this. The anointment itself is like 50 exalts, so going with that unique body armor that I showed was like a cheapest option. But yeah, on the amulet you can get like plus levels to melee skills, which is nice. By the way, Ritualist boosts rings and amulet effect by 25%, but you do need plus 4 to melee skill levels if you want to boost it by an extra 1 level because of Ritualist, and I believe the maximum you can get is plus 3. So again, Ritualist doesn't grant you anything great. You get 1 extra ring and then boost the ring effect, unless you get Ingenuity build and boost your rings and get some crazy rings, but I don't know, that's just probably a different idea. I will include Path of Building import code with this build if you want to copy. It works pretty well, just make sure that you get enough evasion. Now this is probably gonna be my last build, because I will most likely be playing Last Epoch in a couple days. Maybe I will still do one more build. I'm probably not gonna be starting Last Epoch on the new league launch. Maybe I'll wait 1 or 2 days before starting it. So I may still be able to do one more build for PoE 2. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you hopefully soon. Bye bye.